Hey, what is happening? And welcome back to the VBFA Leadership Podcast. It's great to have you here, and it's great to be with two of the very best people. I'm joined today by our co-host, Pastor Colby, our kids pastor. What's up, man?
Hey, what's up? How are y'all?
We're doing good. We're doing good. You doing okay?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking.
And we are joined by the one and only Brother Gary Grisham. What's happening? How are you?
Doing good, sir. How are you?
Good. We're good. It's great to be here. Man, this has been a really fun day. We've actually filmed all this in one day, and there's been some really impactful moments and just some really goofy moments, and we won't show you the bloopers by any means, but if you haven't seen the first two episodes, you got to go back and watch them. All three in this series have been all about the life of Pastor Gary, and we started out, we talked about your life in Texas and Silsbee and Maranatha and all those wonderful things, and then last episode we talked about your life starting out here in Van Buren and making the trek up the mountain and super church and youth and music and all that kind of stuff. And now all of it has led to this last episode where we just we look generally over your life and back at ministry. And if you have any regrets and if there's anything that you really felt like you accomplished and looking forward to what retirement's going to be like. And so we want to just get right into it today, and so, what would you say, Pastor Gary, is the key to longevity? There's a lot of people. I'm friends with a lot of people in ministry, and you see them from maybe one church to another church. They don't stay very long at a church or even in the ministry at all. What would you say is the benefit at being at a single church for 40 years, and what would you say is the key to just being in the ministry this long?
Well, that's a hard question.
I'm sure.
But I think the word that comes out with me is that I just wanted to be faithful. You know, I think faithfulness is a key. When God calls you someplace, I don't go to a place looking for someone where else to go.
There you go.
I want to be faithful in that place.
That's great.
And I think as you know, the Lord could have led me many times to go somewhere else, but I always tried to be faithful to the task that the Lord placed me in.
That's great. That's great.
What I would think, just to be faithful.
That's
let the Lord take you to the places you can't even imagine.
Yeah, that's words to live by.
Yeah. And so with you being in the ministry and at this church for 40 years, obviously a lot has changed over 40 years. I mean, it's 4 decades. It's a lot culturally, technologically, just in our society. A lot has changed in the past 40 years. What has anything changed in regard to how do you approach ministry or how do you do ministry in the past 40 years that you've noticed, or has it changed at all? How have you noticed? How have you had to adapt to society changes and technological changes? How has that changed your approach to ministry over the past 40 years?
Well, this might be a strength, but I think change is good.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Change is good. It progresses people.
Right.
There's been a lot of times when change is necessary, and then there's some times that you have to change because of maybe to further the gospel and do things differently to affect people. Like, who would have ever thought we'd have started a super church program here?
Right.
At one time when we first came, that wasn't even in our memory. And then when you think about how that through the ministry of the church, how it's changed in search and rescue. Super church actually turned into search and rescue for years. Mm-hmm. And because the kids, as they got older, we saw a need of having a church downtown Fort Smith, and with the help of Clarence Smith, that has started an inner city thing that exploded.
Yeah.
And I remember Friday nights that the place would be packed. We'd feed them, we'd sing, worship, and then preach the gospel and see we actually saw lives change from people that lived off the street. So change is necessary. And then there came a time that we had to switch from search and rescue to go a different direction. I think the pastor of the church, that they're the leader. So the pastor begins to feel a different direction that we need to take. That's what we need to follow. So change is necessary.
That's great.
And it's not it's not a scary thing to me. Yet it is, you're apprehensive about changing. But I think when you change according to what God's plan is, it will always work out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, a change is good. I'm glad we're not using the same transparencies that you guys did, in Super Church,
That's true.
Yeah.
So technology helps and people change too, but, one thing that often doesn't change, or one thing that has been true for you over the years is the family that you've had, and that they've been there as a bedrock for you. And so what would you say that Sister Tammy and Amber and Megan and the boys have helped you, or what do they mean to you?
Well, I can tell you right off the bat that when I first met Tammy, because I will be really honest right here, that in the home I was raised in, there was a lot of there was a lot of divorce, a lot of separation, so that affected me a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to make sure that never happened to me,
Yeah.
and I know by the grace of God, and it's not that it shouldn't have happened with my brothers or family or whatever. Sometimes it just happens, but when I met Tammy, the Lord just kind of began to show me, because when I first met her, I began to think, I just might be interested in getting married someday. So, and it wasn't very long after we started dating, actually, that I just felt the Lord said, she's the one. She's the one that's going to help you. And truly, she has been a help and a support through all these years, through every change in ministry, through everything that's happened in our church, and every situation that we've had to deal with, or things that were difficult to go through. She's always been a rock. So I thank God for Tammy. And then the Lord blessed me with two great daughters, Megan and Amber, and they're all serving the Lord. And that's what I think is my greatest achievement, I guess you could say, is not that it's because of me, but the Lord allowed me to have a wife that loved God more than she loved me. And then I have two daughters and two son-in-laws that love God more than they love me. And as long as they can do that, then we can all work together. Yeah. So I think the Lord, I'm thankful God sent me to Arkansas to find Tammy.
Yeah.
I would have never met her if I wouldn't have came here.
Yeah, that's great.
And how did you guys meet?
Well, I spotted her at camp, and then Brother Johnson introduced us. So that was the first step. And then the next thing we would kind of talk in between, but then maybe you should ask her, but maybe not. Maybe you shouldn't ask her. But because I was kind of difficult at the time, because I was wanting to make sure that things were going the right direction. But I knew, but I met her at camp, saw her at camp, and I saw how involved she was in everything. She was involved in the ministry. She was and especially, and maybe this needs to be a requirement for young men and young ladies in the church, especially with the church they go to, is I watched her in the altars.
There you go.
I watched her, and I was impressed how she prayed with people and loved people and cared about things, and even today she prays for people and gets involved in their lives and helps them, and I think that's what impressed me, that I especially in the ministry, you want a helpmate to help you carry what the vision you have. And definitely she's been a lot of times she's been the stronger one than I've been.
Sure.
So I thank God for that. So that's how I met her, and then just a few weeks. Well, I should
just
say
a few weeks
later. It practically seemed that way. That I married her. So
and how long have y'all been married?
Well,
I'm not trying to get you in trouble.
You're going to get him in
This is
trouble.
not a good question to ask. Now listen, okay, I'm not blaming it on my memory's not the best here lately, okay? But it's been a lifetime to me.
Yeah, there you go. That's
A wonderful lifetime.
Wonderful
to me.
lifetime. An eternity.
1 year seems like forever.
Right. That can be good and that can be bad.
We'll let you be the judge.
You have to edit that. That's crazy.
Goodness. Well, the past couple episodes, you took some time to speak into the next generation of youth leaders, next generation of worship leaders. And to just anybody in general who feels called, maybe not even to the ministry, but just feels called to be faithful to their local church or to their local pastor, what advice would you give them? I mean, I know you talked about being an armor bearer. Is there anything else that you would like to say to maybe the next generation to make sure the church keeps moving forward and to keep having church and having leaders, just to, in general, that you would like to pass on to the next generation?
Well, I would think, in my situation, I had always felt that I wanted to go to a church somewhere, but to work in a church, to be an associate pastor. That's what's so strange about that I've always felt that. Mm-hmm. Now, I've had opportunities. I've had people ask me, why don't you, be a pastor? And I said, well, I've prayed about it. I've sought the Lord, but the Lord's always reminded me that I've called you to be an armor bearer. And I think maybe the especially young ministers today that's maybe graduating from out of Bible school or attending college and you want to be in the ministry somehow, I think the best thing to do is to go someplace as an associate first. And I think that as you serve an associate position, you can learn a lot of things from the pastor and how the church operates, the good things that happen and the bad things that happen and the difficult times. I think that especially in our generation today, we've got a lot of people that you go to especially an associate pastor needs to understand, if you go to that church and eventually you want to be a pastor, but you go to that church and you give that church everything that you can give them and support that pastor to its fullest. And until the place that the Lord deals with you and say, now it's time for you to go. At that point, I just totally, sometimes that I've even talked to young ministers that have been at a church and they say, well, I don't like what pastor decided to do this, so I want to go somewhere else. I don't think that's the right time to change. I think you need to be submissive and stay and let the Lord teach you something through that era that eventually you will go. But that's the thing I've always felt in my heart, that I wanted to serve Pastor Johnson when I came. And I know that if I'd had opportunities, you would always think about it, but then the Lord would tell me, no, you stay put. I've got something for you to do here at this church. And so eventually, I think God calls associates like he does pastors.
Sure.
And I think what people need to understand, if it's an associate, that's nothing wrong with that. You learn a lot of things. And I think that as you go and you support that pastor and you love that church, then the world can be yours.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you say as staff pastors? We all three of us are staff pastors under Pastor Britt. What would you say would be good ways that we or other people that might be on staff at a church, how can we be loyal? What are some practical ways that people could say that same thing about us that's been said of you, like he's the most loyal person? In what ways have you shown yourself to be loyal? What ways could we do that same thing that you've done?
Well, I would have to say that the first thing to do is in loyalty is to love and respect the individual that's over you. I've had the chance and the honor to love two pastors as my pastor. That's sure. Bobby L. Johnson and Pastor Britt Brooks. And I loved them. And I love Pastor Britt, and I've learned a lot of things from them. From each one of them. And I think that if you go into a church as an associate pastor, you must be loyal. And loyalty means telling them things that are difficult to tell. I'll just say it like this, that someone would come up to me and would start maybe years ago to say something that was negative toward Brother Johnson. And I learned a valuable lesson, and I'm trying to remember who taught me this, but they did this in a session at a minister's conference. And they said that as an associate, and they asked the question, before you tell me what that is, let me get a pencil and piece of paper and write it down and say who's telling it so I can make sure I tell him, the correct thing.
Yeah.
And you'll be surprised how many times I say, well, that's okay.
Right.
You know, because you just don't accept the negativity because, you know, everybody's got problems and situations.
Sure.
But the thing about it is, if God's called you to a place, you'll be a servant and a follower and love and pray and be loyal, then God could take you to places you would never even imagine.
I think that's great, and I think those are principles that apply outside of ministry, even, you know, in the workplace or in a person's family. Those are really great. Wasn't that Brother Jackson that said that?
Yes.
I think he was the one that did that one time. I think you're right.
He's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, he
on
was.
that, too.
He was. You're right. He was.
So we've got all of your accomplishments. We've talked about all the things you've done. What, if any, regrets do you have over the years? Do you have any regrets in regards to anything ministry wise or anything you wish you would have done differently?
Well, I mean, that's a hard question.
It is. Throw a curveball at you.
The thing that, you know, I don't regret anything that necessarily that I've been involved in. I think my regret would be that I didn't have the strength to follow through with keep it going, doing that, you know, because I understand, you know, that times change and people change, and I knew there was a day coming, you know, but I always had in the back of my mind that, you know, that I wanted to be loyal to this church, and then loyal to the pastor, that God's going to lead me and direct me and keep me where I'm supposed to be.
Sure.
I think every associate pastor just needs to go to that place and think they're going to be there for eternity. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Life. Because if you go someplace, there's so many lessons you can learn in ministry that I've been able to speak in. I mean, not saying it, but to speak in conferences about how being loyal to your pastor, you know, because you know, it's not, don't misunderstand. Sometimes, even when the pastor gets on to you, nobody has ever known that. I don't take that home.
Right.
I've never told my wife when Brother Johnson would tell me something that was negative about me or what I had to do. I've never told anyone about maybe if Pastor Britt had to correct me in an area. The thing about it is I learned from those corrections. Yeah. And I think any kind of young person that's going to go into the ministry needs to know that they've got to go in with tough skin.
Yeah.
They've got to know that God's called you to do that, then follow that calling until the Lord sends you to that other level. Yeah. And that other level could be just right there. You just grow stronger in your relationship with God, and you help grow a church.
That is so great.
Church.
I love that.
Yeah,
that's great.
That's really good.
Well, I know you've told millions of funny stories and stuff about different things that happen. Do you have like a funniest moment in ministry that's ever happened to you? I know a couple that I'm thinking of, but what would you say is maybe the funniest thing that's happened while you were ministering or being on staff or something?
Well, there's been quite a few of those times. I've
Just a
messed
couple.
up I've messed up and done something wrong, but I'll never forget when we first moved into the church, when we had the mauve carpet and everything, and the pastor's chairs was on the platform, and I was leading worship. And then I was turning around to direct the choir for this choir special we were going to do. Well, at that same time, Brother Johnson was changing his microphone battery. And so at the same time I turned around, he just kind of handed it to me to get rid of it or something. So I took it and just put it in my pocket. Just dropped it in my pocket. And so I began to direct the choir, and we were just going. And I think the choir thought I was really getting with it. But the problem was that my keys had shorted against the battery in my pocket, and it literally caused a hole in my head and burnt my leg. And I was moving around and shouting and doing it, but I wasn't really shouting in the spirit. I was shouting because I was trying to loose the keys from my battery. And then after the choir song was over, I immediately went to the side door and Lord, the battery was so hot because it burned a hole in my leg. So he thought I was shouting, but I was shouting all right, but it wasn't from the Spirit of God.
That is
from a battery.
funny. That is really great.
But many other times I've knelt at the altar to pray for people. We used to have prayer time at the altar, and I would ask them, pray for them, and I would. They said my leg is bad, and I reached down, just kind of touched the foot or something, just pray, and I'm just praying, and when I'd look up at them, they said, "Here's the other foot." So I just prayed again for the other foot. Oh, many times. I don't want to go into some of them, but very embarrassing. But hey, it's all right.
Why don't you tell us about the story of the Easter program? Was it Easter program or Christmas?
The Easter program from somewhere.
From down under.
It was from somewhere. We were doing a cantata, and we did it by split track, and we started. It was a very opening song, and I hope and pray that no one finds that cantata tape or anything, because if I do, I'm going to burn it. But, we started the soundtrack, but the problem was when we started the soundtrack, it's supposed to be real powerful, but they started in the middle of the song.
Uh-oh.
And so we were trying to thumb through the pages real quick to get to where it was at, and you could hear the background vocals on the CD, but the choir was not singing. So finally we just jumped in and just started singing with them, and it was just a wreck. I said, and then it just went downhill from there.
Yeah. Because
a little bit later we finally got our stuff together on the soundtrack. But one of the other songs that we did with the soundtrack, there was a scene where they was going to take Jesus down from the cross and take him to the tomb, and they got him down the cross. They was doing everything they possibly could, and they picked Jesus up, and they was carrying him to the tomb, and the thing was, one of the people that was carrying him kind of tripped and fell, and next thing you know, they was just trying to grab him. They literally just threw Jesus in the tomb and just rolled the stone over and then left. And I said, okay. So we got through that, and it was quite interesting to see. We've had many things like that to happen.
That is great.
I don't want to go into all of them.
Right.
But that's two of the ones I really remember.
That's great. That's great. Well, that one of the things that's we touched on in episode number 2, and we're wrapping up here. We just have a couple questions left for you. But one of the things that you touched on in episode 2 was, you kind of mentioned your heart attack, and if anybody's watched service the last few years, Pastor Britt has mentioned it several times about you dying out in the hallway, and and the Lord bringing you back to life, and that's one of the things that caused this I guess even conversation about transition for you in the ministry. Is there anything specific about that day or that particular event that sticks out to you, or that you want to mention today about that?
Well,
do you even remember what happened?
All I can vaguely remember is that I knew that I don't remember the guy getting dizzy or something like that, and then I couldn't speak or whatever, and I would think I was leading a song. I'm not sure exactly. I'm trying to remember that, and but I just went out, and I vaguely remember. I know that it was Dr. Jeff and someone else came into the room, and I know they laid me in that little room that was side there, and I remember someone telling me to lay down flat, and the next thing, I do not remember. I remember Dr. Jeff saying I can't remember exactly what he said, and then I remember the first EMT, the young man that came in, and then I don't remember anything from then on until I woke up the Tuesday morning. I believe it was Tuesday morning or Tuesday afternoon in the hospital, and Tammy was there and began to explain to me what had happened. Yeah. And I began to think about that, and I thought, and she began to tell me how many times, and the young man that I think was doing the CPR, he actually came to see me. I think it was the Thursday after I was in the hospital, and he had brought someone to the hospital at Mercy, and he came to see me because when he walked in the room, he said, "Man, I just wanted to come see, to me, a miracle because." And I began to thank him for what he did, and he actually told me that I think I crashed 5 times on the way to the hospital, and was crashed the 5th time as I was going into the hospital. That said, my heart had completely stopped, and so it was quite sobering to me when Tammy began to explain exactly what happened, because I didn't really know, and it's been a challenge. And it was, but I've learned to appreciate the things about just life in general. Every little thing means really. I love everything that happens. Yeah. Even through good and bad times, I think I'm here to live because the Lord's allowed me to continue to serve. And but then I knew when I had the little stroke. I think maybe it might have been a year or 2 after, year and a half after. I'm not really sure, the mini stroke. I knew that, and down deep inside, I knew that it was a time for maybe something different, and I said, I want to commit myself to this church, and I knew that. And I said, well, then I'll just, kind of step out of the picture. And then, we went through a very difficult time with Brother Johnson's passing, and all this was, had gone on, and then we was going strong in the church with Pastor Britt coming, and but I knew that something had to change. Sure. And the I guess the hardest conversation I've ever had with Pastor Britt was when I explained to him that we were just talking, and I just began to talk to him and said, Pastor, I really think, because I want this church to move forward and go forward, and maybe I need to just kind of, retire and let things happen and enjoy life. Yeah. And because I've got some wonderful grandkids I want to be around to love on and all this. So I think I just want to. I said, I want to be involved in the church. I don't want to go anywhere else because there's no other church like Van Buren First Assembly of God. Yeah. And I want to serve, do something. I don't care. Coming up, help cleaning. I don't care what I do. Yeah. I will always be involved in the church somehow. And so the Lord blessed me to have life. And so I want to enjoy that life and enjoy it not only with my family, but with the people of First Assembly.
That's great. That's really great.
Awesome.
Yeah. A lot of people, you would think when you retire that you're not involved or a part of anything anymore, but I think that's your heart. That's a servant's heart, that you do want to be involved and be a part of things. So I love that.
We've got some of the greatest volunteers a church could ever have. Yeah. And I was watching just, the last night when we were having the Wednesday night service at the meal. Yeah. And so I began to think about. I looked around. I just took a moment and just stopped and looked around and saw all the people serving and doing something and working. And I said, Lord, that's what I want to be. I want to be just like them. Yeah. I want to be a servant, because this, there's a lot of great churches in this world, a lot of great churches in this city. But I tell you, there's nothing like Van Buren First Assembly. That's right. And nothing would thrill me more for me just to come to church, enjoy church, and I even told Pastor Zach, who's coming to be our music pastor, that I want to be in your choir. Yeah. One day when he starts a choir, I want to be in that, because I'm so excited about them coming. They're gonna take us to a whole new place, and I love it. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to what God's got in store.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really great to be able to see, nearly passing the baton on to Zach and encouraging him and, being there, cheering him on and stuff. I love to see that. I love that. It's really great.
And too, I mean, from somebody who's, been in a position of leadership for 40 years, and to step out and retire and say, hey, I'll clean the floors if I have to, if as long as I get to serve. I think that sets a good example for a lot of us, and
absolutely
aspirations,
like it does.
So
what would you say retirement looks like for you? You like to fish or hunt or something, or
Well, I'm not a fisherman. I fish, but I'm just a real fisherman or hunter. I hunted in my early days. And I killed the very first time I went hunting with my dad. I killed a deer. That was good. That's the last time.
That's good enough for me.
That's the last time I've been hunting. I kind of cried when I thought it might have been Rudolph. But no, I think retirement for me is that, me and Tammy, we've talked about it. At some point in time during this next year, of course, I hope this doesn't get out where they can hear it, but because I want it to be a surprise. Yeah. But we have a lot of young men that's out of our church that's pastoring. And I'd like to just walk into their church one Sunday morning, me and Tammy, and surprise them and just say, we want to, thank you for carrying on the message of wherever the Lord sends you. Yeah. I'd like to surprise them one time. We'll spread that out, and because I know that I do want to be a part of the choir when he starts the choir, and I do want to be a part of ministry in the church. So hey, Tammy and I just want to just see First Assembly go.
Yeah, that's really great.
Yeah, I love it.
Awesome.
Well, I think, do you have any final thoughts or anything else we didn't ask you that you'd like to say?
No.
Well,
it's not like your final thoughts, but just for the episodes that we've done.
Final thoughts.
Yeah, we won't write it on your gravestone or anything like that. But
no, thank you for doing this. I mean, this is very kind, and I couldn't think of any two people that I'd rather ask me those questions than you two. But I really feel that this church has got the potential to go beyond what could ever have dreamed to do. And with staff and with the workers that we have here, the sky's the limit. And because this world is in a very, very difficult place, and they need to see the Lord Jesus Christ like never before. And no better place, what I can say is that they will not hear, greater preaching and singing and worshiping and opportunities to do than they will at this church right here. Right. And my prayer is that as we go forward in this difficult day, that we will support our pastor and say, let's do whatever we can to win this city and this city. And I've even been told here lately that there's been people moving here from other cities because they've watched pastor online. And I believe God's got a message in First Assembly. Yes. And please understand, Pastor Britt's been preaching sermons that are relevant for today.
Yes.
Right now, we need that kind of preaching, especially in these difficult days we're in with all this happening. And he's got the message because God's given it to him. Yeah. So I think we need to totally, take that message as he preaches it, and then as we leave our churches to go out to the places and talk to people about and say, hey, we've got the answer. His name's Jesus. And if you're not going to a church, come to Van Buren First Assembly. You'll find the presence of God, the preaching of God's word like never before.
That's awesome.
Amen.
That's awesome. We couldn't say it better ourselves.
I know.
This has been great. We love you.
We do.
We love you.
We love you.
And we honestly would not be here today. I wouldn't be the person I am today if it wasn't for you in my life. So thank you so much for all that you've done. And it's been great to have an office next to you and joke around with you and all that kind of stuff. Scare you all these years and all that kind of stuff.
Scared me a lot of times, even after the heart attack.
Yeah, we tried to cool that a little bit after that.
Take a step back.
Yeah, it kind of scared us a little bit too. So
yeah.
We love you and we appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming and being a part of this and being transparent, opening up, talking about some things that are difficult to talk about, but I really feel like are really going to be beneficial to people and help the next generation of people and help us to follow in your footsteps and do what you've done for the kingdom of God. So we love you. Thank you so much for watching and being a part. Hope that you've enjoyed this podcast. Check back in January and February, the beginning of next year, to see some new content and some cool stuff we're really excited about. So thanks so much.
Yeah.
So I guess that's it.
We'll see you next time.
All right.